payment and wallet are two very important topics to actually our Mobey community and part of our listeners of this podcast. We actually talk about UCP and AP2. So what I would like to start with you today is to break down a bit the strategic problem that AP2 is designed to solve, for Google, but anyways in the wider economic payment system. Google has been probably the most prominent player in the agentic commerce space. Last September, they've launched with more than 60 other organizations the AP2 protocol. What followed in January this year was that they launched UCP with other vendors of the industry. And now in March, they launched verifiable intent together with MasterCard. This is episode 3 of the Agent Commerce Economy. We are back again with me, Rupert, co-chair of the AI Expert Group at Mobey Forum, and Amir, also co-chair of the AI Expert Group.
Hi, Rupert. Looking forward to this episode.
Yes, and today we have the pleasure to talk to Deniz Oran, Head of Payment Partnerships at Google EMEA. So let's get started. Hi, Deniz. You're the Head of Payment Partnerships at Google in EMEA. Could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us what this role entails?
Happy to be on this podcast with you today. I lead the payments partnerships for Google's consumer payments products in EMEA. These are two main products: Google Wallet for mobile payments on the Android ecosystem, and also Google Pay, which is our e-commerce checkout button. And what partnerships means is my team works on the relationships we have with all the different players in the ecosystem, such as issuing banks, payment networks, e-commerce merchants, payments processors.
What we've seen is that Google is a very important player actually in this field. You have been active at multiple layers, let's say, and have been developing protocols, standards, etc. Today, we wanted to dive deeper a bit into the core strategic problem that AP2 is designed to solve for Google and for the wider payments ecosystem.
Payments have always been the connective tissue of commerce, and the tools we have right now and the technology are making payments simple, safe, and secure, also for the consumer payments products. And we are very much focused on reducing friction in payments, whether people paying at Google's own products or they are paying with merchants. And now is an especially exciting time because we are just at the early stages of agentic commerce, and I feel so privileged, to be part of this, been part of the mobile payments transition. We think in general that there is great potential with this new technology to handle tedious parts of shopping and payments.
I mentioned AP2, but actually recently there has been a much bigger story, and it was UCP. You co-developed this with Shopify as far as we know. So in plain terms, can you actually dive deep a bit? What does UCP mean, and what is AP2, and where do the two start and end relatively to each other?
Before we dive in, for these agentic technologies to scale, they really have to work for everyone, and they should work across the entire shopping journey. And this is why what's been really important for Google is to solve for open protocols. Both of these protocols are open source standards that are globally available and free for everyone in the industry. So that's more the high-level introduction. But let's take it in two parts. So let's talk about UCP first. So UCP is the open source standard, and it has been built in collaboration with partners like Shopify, Walmart, Etsy, Wayfair, and Target. And the goal here is to create a common language between AI agents and business systems. And what's really good about this is it's also been endorsed by major payments industry players and the international payments networks. But in more practical terms, what does it mean? The first use case that you saw in the news that was announced earlier this year is about a human-in-the-loop transaction. So UCP is powering a checkout feature where the user is checking out directly within AI mode in Google Search and the Gemini app. And at the moment, this is available for users in the US. Merchants outside of the US, they cannot use it to connect to Google's AI agents. At the same time, the open source standards and the protocols are available globally for other potential use cases. And what's important is we hope to bring it to the rest of the world, and then we can talk a bit more about that here. What I'm especially excited about UCP is for merchants in the US, they will remain the merchant of record, and they can benefit from transparency created by this protocol. And it's looking at the entire shopping journey, not just checkout. So that comes back to my original point around the simplification, using technology to simplify shopping journeys. And UCP itself is compatible with major industry protocols like A2A and MCP. So that's the first part of the question. So AP2 is for when transactions become truly agentic, and it has a modular design. It aims to create trust among buyers, merchants, and providers with some flexibility. And what we have done is we have now integrated AP2 as an extension within UCP. So then it's one seamless flow for the shopping journey, also when the AI agent is acting on behalf of the user. And these protocols work seamlessly together as part of a unified experience for the user. When we look at agentic transactions and how they can work, the systems that govern each of the steps, they have to line up, they need to talk to each other, they need to be acts on the behalf of a user, and potentially any breakdown in one part of this process could mean that the transaction doesn't happen. And putting all these pieces together is a lot of effort, and we see that many people in the industry are building custom plugs or custom sockets, and this can be expensive and it may not scale. So when we think about the Universal Commerce Protocol, we wanted to build a common language, and that's way it will sit between the agentic experiences with the consumer surfaces on one hand, and then the business backend on the other hand, so that they can work together seamlessly. And with our focus on open source and access, we feel that we're able to offer a really good platform for future development for the whole ecosystem.
You mentioned now AP2 and UCP. You gave us an introduction to both concepts or to both components. In an end-to-end agentic commerce flow, where do AP2 and UCP hand off to each other? What are the key integration touch points?
So both are open source standards. They're compatible and they work together. UCP is focusing on standardizing the commerce actions. And as I was mentioning to you, this common language idea is there. And then AP2 is around the agentic payments. So making the agentic payments safe, verifiable, and it's creating a clear trail of accountability. Just to dig deeper here, to finalize a purchase, AP2 requires a verifiable proof of the user authorization for both the purchase and the payment methods. And UCP is implementing this is by generating and signing the two distinct cryptographic objects during the checkout flow. This is really the connection here. AP2 is the extension of UCP, and then in the checkout flow, UCP is playing parts in the implementation of the creation and signing of these distinct objects. I can give a bit more detail here. The two objects that we're talking about is the checkout mandate and the payment mandate. So the checkout mandate is representing the user's signed authorization. So it provides the merchant with the proof of what the user agreed to buy. And then the payment mandate is actually capturing the user's authorization of a specific payment credential. For example, I want to buy with my UBS card, and it serves as a proof for the payment network, the issuer, and the credential vault that the user has allowed the use of their credentials for this specific transaction. And both mandates are provided to the merchant via the UCP API with the expectation that the payment mandate is passed along by the merchant to their PSP. I want to actually talk about a hypothetical scenario to make this come to life, and hopefully that helps, because this is a lot of terminology that we're throwing out here. Let's say that I go to my agent of choice for some inspiration to redecorate my daughter's bedroom. I want to freshen up the look, and I start conversing with the AI agents. I upload a photo of the room, and the agent suggests that I can add a colorful rug. Then I dig in more and I start looking at rugs from different retailers. And I love the design of a rug with a cat, and I want to buy it. So at that point, with enablement from the UCP protocol, I can make my purchase from that retailer using the payment credentials that I had associated with my account. That's the first part of the scenario with the human in the loop and what I was referring to earlier about what's available today in the US. But then let's take the scenario further. What if the rug that I liked is not available in the size that I need for my daughter's bedroom? In a normal e-commerce scenario, I would need to wait, I would need to come back to the website, or I would need to buy something else completely. And here, assuming that the AP2 extension is fully available, we're imagining a possibility where I can give the intent that I'm allowing the agent to buy this rug at the right size when it becomes available, and I'm agreeing on the payments. That's going to happen some point in the future. So this is the second part of the scenario. It's combining all of these ideas together, and this is the change that we're all going to experience.
Do you see any kind of scenarios where there is a misalignment between the intention of the customer and then what actually happens based on the actions of the agent?
We don't expect misalignments. UCP is creating the cards, and then the AP2 allows the user to define the conditions which must be true for the cart to be fulfilled. Like my rug example, I chose my rug, the size, and how I want to pay. Because the cart and the checkout mandates are connected, they're going to align with each other.
If we move on to the topic of data minimization and privacy, so there is always this kind of concern from the consumer side about all the data that has been collected. How do you ensure that data minimization is in place when we talk about AP2, and what type of data are kind of necessary for these payment relevant proofs?
In this case, the user's prompts, like that brainstorming, for example, I was doing about my daughter's bedroom, or maybe I'm talking about, her needs, etc. That is kept private between the user and the AI agents. And that is a key aspect of UCP and AP2. And then from a merchant perspective, that's also another concern that we hear from the ecosystem, like, how do I know more about this transaction? UCP actually shares risk data, which is helping the merchant maintain control on which transactions they want to approve and deny. And more of the details of this risk data are actually on the UCP website. In general, UCP is ensuring that the merchant gets the information they need to process the order. Maybe another point is more from a payments ecosystem point of view. The protocol is ensuring that the payments ecosystem also only gets the data. There is access to SKU level data. This is in case there's a dispute and not before that.
Another question I would have is about auditability. So across AP2 and UCP, what artifacts should exist to support audit and non-repudiation? So, who authorizes what? Especially if there are some chargebacks.
The new vocabulary for all of us, non-repudiation. So not being able to deny that you performed it. This has become a key component of the discussion. If we take it for both of the standards, so for UCP, there are three things. The merchants control the business rules. They remain the merchant of the records, and they retain the consumer, the relationship. Whereas AP2, the primary objective of AP2 is to provide the evidence that helps payments networks establish the accountability. So there are a few important concepts here. The important principle is that of verifiable intent that is addressing the link, the risks here and the linkages. So it's not inferred action. What I mean by that is that the transaction is actually anchored in a deterministic way, and there is this non-repudiable proof of intent, such as the user signed checkout mandate. This is a key point here, that the checkout mandate and the information within it is going to provide the proof.
It's like a ultimate gate, no? Security gate where the human can interact and say, that's not what I meant, no?
I go back to the example. I chose the rug, I chose the color, the size, how I would pay for it. I was actively making those decisions as part of the process. And then we're not relying on interpreting this ambiguous LLM output, and this helps determine the accountability. So if I went back and let's say I got this carpet 2 weeks later, and then I went back and I tried to dispute it, actually there is going to be a record of my choices, which is going to make me accountable for that purchase.
If something went wrong, I bought a rug, but then I want to dispute it, I want a revocation. Actually, there is not one owner of the resolution, but rather there is kind of that liability is split across parties, and we have to check in that record which party needs to prove that, or everyone proves that they were right, or where something went wrong, or can you dive deep a bit on that?
What's been launched in the US is the current implementation of UCP is with the human in the loop, and the user is actually clicking a pay button and they're buying from the merchant directly. Merchant is a merchant of record. So the transaction is happening as it would on an e-commerce website. There isn't a change to the expected frameworks of the payments industry. And then for more future scenarios, we are not taking positions on accountability. Every network defines and owns the different roles and its rules. So if you look at the two protocols, the goal is to provide the evidence, and the different parties, the merchants, issuers, and networks can use this evidence to make the decisions.
It's the ultimate kind of validation. Google plays a big role, let's say. So multiple things are evolving in parallel. How do you see fragmentation? How do you see governance? What coordination mechanism are in place to prevent fragmentation?
At the moment, AP2 and UCP are both open, as we mentioned, and they're published on GitHub, and they're available to different ecosystem players to try out, contribute to them. I know some of our partners in the region are already contributing. They're testing with reference implementations. So that's also what makes it very exciting, right? It's a very active space, and then everybody wants to contribute.
When you say in our region, you say actually in Europe, or are we speaking about the US?
EMEA.
EMEA. Perfect. No, that's great to hear. No, I wanted to make sure, right? But it's great, even better, right? If EMEA region is jumping on the train and there is, donation to the protocol. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, partners based in EMEA are super motivated. They care a lot about making payments safe and simpler and secure and innovation. It's really fantastic. I also want to emphasize that because this is now launched in the US, but at the same time, I mean, we have, of course, the goal to bring it to more countries in the world, but at the same time, like European partners and EMEA partners are very engaged. To tie to your question, the modular design, like the way UCP was imagined, is actually also enabling these community-driven innovations and extensions. They should all work with each other. And to be direct to your question, AP2 and UCP can evolve independently because they are sitting independently. But what's is important to emphasize here is Google published a specific extension which embeds AP2 within UCP. So this extension is the bridge which can ensure that both protocols stay aligned on the core principles.
This is exactly the governance that gives guidance, but at the same time doesn't limit, right, in that sense.
When it comes to this comparison between European market and US market, or let's say EMEA versus Europe, is there anything right now, some regulatory or market constraints that differentiate as much that they would influence the development of AP2 or UCP in these different markets? Because you mentioned before that it's open standard, so it can evolve differently. Is this already happening, or do we still have the kind of the same foundation in both?
So the protocols are global, and the dialogue and the discussion is happening in a global way. I think different players are approaching it based on their different circumstance. There's very active dialogue, and there are a lot of considerations. And as I had said, there is a ton of interest, which I think is great, because this kind of like community-driven innovation is the best for our industry. And we are encouraging partners to experiment and try different things. As for Google's own implementation on Google services, that's hopefully coming to more countries in the coming months and years. And we will be, of course, very focused on compliance with the applicable laws and standards that are relevant in each of those geographies. And we already operate in many of these regions, so we have some level of familiarity with the standards, but I also appreciate that it's a dynamic space and a lot is changing. One more thing to add there is what's been really great with the launch of AP2 and UCP is we've had international partners from all regions of the world who have also endorsed the protocol. So they've already given their thoughts and endorsements, and we're just exploring ways of how we can expand to additional markets.
We've been throwing kind of questions at you. Is there anything actually that you want to share with us? Google sounds very excited about the opportunity and the vision, right? You sound very excited, but anything that wasn't mentioned?
We are at the beginning of the journey, and we are excited and motivated. At the same time, I feel like sometimes we have to be patient. And we're all going to explore and learn as an industry and evolve our processes. And I think in the end, that's going to be very good for all of the players and for the users as their needs also evolve. I just want to encourage people to engage with the standards, reach out to us, be in an open dialogue about the future.
Google is a great partner in lots of different areas. Glad that you guys are so involved on agentic commerce. And yeah, we just want to extend our heartfelt thank you to you that you joined us today for this discussion. And, we always talk about lightning speed, kind of how this technology and how in general the standards evolve. Who knows if we have this conversation again in 6 or 12 months? What has evolved since then, right? And where do we stand by then?
It is an evolving space. I'm happy to have been here, had the opportunity to chat with you and answer some of your questions and hopefully clarify also for our partners out there too.
Thank you very much, Deniz.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's so exciting to see how the backbone of agentic commerce is being built in the real time. And we're seeing how this protocol enables interoperability across ecosystem. My impression is we are observing how the backbone of agentic commerce is built in the real time. And this with open source technology, providing the interoperability across the ecosystem.
Real time is a very good word, actually. If something happens in real time, actually, you're scrambling from quarter to quarter, not from a year to year planning. Next time we talk to someone who can talk to us about the front end and who can address the concerns and the questions of European merchants, of PSPs. And so we're going to have Raja Sagi from Nexi Group. We're looking very much forward for you to turning in to the next episode.